Okie dokie. What's up? So, I'm recording this video with my cell phone. I hope I'm pointing it to my face. So we'll see how good the sound and the video quality is. I'm interested in how long the battery lasts. So, this is a request video that I got a couple days ago on my YouTube profile page. Somebody wanted me, Luca Sabricchio or whatever, wanted me to know what I thought about Hitler, the Nazis, and the Holocaust. So I'm kind of sick right now. Like, something's seriously wrong with me. I think I have mono. So I can't think that clearly. I'm probably going to do some yawning, but whatever, we'll see. That's why I'm doing it in bed. But, yeah, it's an interesting question. Something worthy of thinking about because, you know, Germans are cool people. How could the Germans ever get all crazy and, you know, kill all those and torture all those Jews? You know, Jews are cool. And unfortunately, you can't really ask Germans that because they get like upset and it kind of brings up painful memories for them. I asked a German dude that question in Kathmandu at a restaurant. Some dude I didn't even know. It was just like some random people getting together, and I'm like, yeah, what's the deal with that whole Hitler killing all the Jews? And he's like, oh, you don't want to ask Germans that question. Don't ever mention Hitler to German. So that was about as far as that conversation went. And then there was these hippie Germans who I was hanging out with, and I asked them. And they go, well, Germans were desperate. They were poor and desperate, and they went crazy. And so, but they didn't even really want to get into it. So if you want to know what happened, how that whole Nazi bullshit happened, you know, and Hitler and all that, then don't ask a German, ask an American. Because the Americans know the answer to everything. Being the smartest people in the world and all that. So, which is true. I mean, go on YouTube and all the videos on YouTube, it's by Americans. So Americans are the ones who get out there and, you know, they don't sit on their asses and troll. So here's my take on how in the hell that ugly shit could happen merely, how long was it ago? And how long ago was it? 70 years? Merely 70 years ago? I mean, pretty recently. I mean, only fricky 30 years before I was born, like heck, you know? How in the heck? So, is this still recording? Yep. So, and how's the battery doing? If the battery does, I'll just have to splice it together. Or maybe I'll plug it up. Let's see if I plug this up to my computer so that the battery doesn't die, and hopefully it's going to keep recording. And it keeps recording, and it's... Oops. Okay, yeah, that didn't work. You can't plug your phone into the computer while you're making a video. It doesn't work. You have to keep it unplugged. So hopefully the battery will last. We'll see how long the battery lasts. So let's get back to what I was talking about before. Yeah. Well, Germans were really desperate. They're really poor. And they needed a scapegoat. I think the biggest thing to take away from the whole Holocaust thing is the whole scapegoat mentality. People, retarded human, not because there's different kinds of humans, you know, but the masses are fucking retarded. So, retarded human mentality is, whenever something's wrong, you gotta just blame it on somebody else. Have a scapegoat. And so if you want to avoid problems like that, wars, you know, and persecution of people, just don't have a scapegoat, you know. Don't be against a certain kind of person. Just because they're a certain kind of person. And that kind of mentality still persists to this day. In the Balkans and Eastern Europe, they still have that same attitude towards gypsies, and I know that there's lots of people in those Balkan countries who would do a Holocaust against, who would gas. I'm convinced of it. There's probably a hefty percentage of people in those Balkan countries who would vote yes to to gas gypsies and just get rid of them, because I've dealt with some really scary comments on like my What American Thinks About Serbia video, saying shit like gypsies aren't Serbians, you know? And it's like, well, if gypsies aren't Serbians, then what are they, you know? They're a non-entity, they're a non-human, because they're not Indians. They left there 500 years ago. They're not Romanians if they're born in Serbia. You can't be shuffling people around if nobody wants them. You are what you were born in. If you're born, you know, if some Mexican moves into America and has a baby here, and even if that baby, if those Mexicans are idiots, and a lot of Mexicans who come here are morons and don't ever bother to learn English, their babies are still American. So you are what you the whatever country you're born in, and that's what people need to understand. And people also need to understand that, you know, get rid of the whole scapegoat mentality. Right now in America, I'd say the scapegoat people. Well, racism against blacks still exists. Racism against Mexicans in America exists, and but the one scapegoat in America who is transcends all races is stoners. Stoners are the big scapegoat in America because marijuana is illegal, and because marijuana is illegal, people feel like they have the right to hate somebody just because they're a stoner or because they said something having to do with marijuana, even though they've never smoked marijuana, or they smoked it once when they were 16 and they didn't even get high or whatever, or you know, or so they're like, yes, we hate the stoners. I deal with comments like that all the time on YouTube. I'm not even a stoner, but I guess because I'm like relaxed and laid back and chill, you know, then I have that stoner mentality. So then they're like, fuck you, you stoner, you know, your opinion doesn't matter and shit because you're a stoner. I got that comment on my Australia video. So, yeah, we just need to get rid of the scapegoat. And that's basically what happened. Germany got so... What happened with Germany is they rose really high. And, like, the higher you rise, the farther you fall. And so they rose really high, and then they fell really far. Germany, around, you know, right before the beginning of World War I, Germany was doing really good. Germany was like the most advanced country in the world. England started the Industrial Revolution. They were the most advanced country in the world. And then Germans caught on to that. And they were second generation. They were like second tier industrial revolution, so they kind of got into it, and they didn't have to deal with any of the growing pains having to do with the industrial revolution. It's kind of like the Japanese, you know, Americans. We invent all this technological stuff, and then the Japanese they get their hands on it, and they get to build their first machines on second generation, so they don't have to refurbish anything. They just jump right in there, and then they take off. And that's how Germany did. They jumped in there, and then they overtook. They outstripped England, you know, and France and everybody else in terms of like railroads and factories and all that kind of stuff. And they were doing really well. And then World War I happened, and World War I was just the most ridiculous, useless war ever. Probably even more, well, more than World War II if it hadn't have been for the Holocaust. But then they had the Holocaust. So, but World War I was ridiculous. World War I happened because Sarajevo, in Sarajevo, Bosnia, which belonged to Hungary at the time, I mean Austria, the crown prince, you know, the next guy in charge got killed, Franz Ferdinand. And so then Austria decided to declare war against, I guess, it was a Serbian national who killed him, so I think they declared war against Serbia, even though Serbia already agreed to, like, you know, take responsibility for it and go after that guy who was just a rogue assassin anyways. It was kind of like um, America waging war against uh, Saudi Arabia just because some rogue Saudis, did 9/11. But we didn't attack Saudi Arabia. We attacked Iraq, which was even more ridiculous. But yeah, so they start that war, and then Germany jumped in because Germany had this agreement with Austria that if Austria ever had a war, then Germany would automatically jump in. So they jumped in, and then like Serbia and all those other countries they fought had an agreement with all those other countries, France and England. So next thing you know, you have World War One, and back in those days, they didn't realize how destructive a war could get because now they had technology, they had machine guns and gas. So they thought war would just be like, and especially the Germans, they thought war would just be like whoever was the baddest ass would kick ass, and then the war would be over, and that's what the Germans thought. But they had the trench warfare, which lasted 4 years, and that's the ridiculous thing about World War One. It was just a slaughter fest. People knew they were going to die, and they just fought, and they ran out of this, like that movie Gallipoli, ran out of their little hole and ran into the machine guns and died, and until the people, the actual ground soldiers rebelled, didn't want to fight anymore, but then the officers were just taking orders from the generals who didn't know what the hell was going on, and so it was just this line of failure to communicate and people just doing shit just because they're told. But anyways, I got way off track on that. But yeah, Germany lost. Germany gave up because Germany's ally, Russia, or was Germany's ally Russia? Anyways, America joined in, and Germany knew that America couldn't win the war, or Germany knew that Germany couldn't win the war if America was joining in, so they gave up. The German rulers gave up, and but the German citizens, see, this is like a long time past, where that like line of communication wasn't so good, and the only people in those days who really knew what was going on were like the educated elite. So all the normal, regular people, especially Germans, even though they were dying, none of World War One was in Germany. It was all in France, just over the border, but it was in France. So the German citizens didn't really witness World War One. It was the French and who really witnessed it and rebelled against it. So after a few years went by, Germans were like, "Oh man, it's our leader's fault for quitting the war, and we were winning the war. When we quit, we would have won because the battle was never even in German anyways." And then they had the Treaty of Versailles, which was where Germany had to pay off these really big war reparations against to pay France and England back, and it was really high and unrealistic to make Germany pay for that, but the Germans like agreed to it, and so they were paying it. And so the German elite, they thought that they could get out of the war reparations by pay less on the war reparations by devaluing their currency a lot, because they agreed on paying a certain amount of money. It wasn't like a certain amount of money adjusted for inflation or anything. It was just a certain amount of money. So they just deflated their money so that they wouldn't have to pay as much back. They thought that would work. It'd be cutesy to do it that way. Only problem is it destroyed the German economy, and it made it so that none of the people in Germany could buy stuff amongst themselves. And in those days, the country of Germany, it was called the Weimar Republic, and yeah, inflation got so bad that people would have to have a wheelbarrow full of coins just to buy a loaf of bread, so the country kind of shut down, and people were like, what the hell's going on? What's wrong? Whose fault is it? Who's the scapegoat? And they thought, well, it was the money people. who caused the devaluation and all this money stuff that people didn't understand. And so they made the Jews the scapegoat. And Jews have already, since the time of Christ, have always been a scapegoat. There's always been anti-Semitism. So let's talk about anti-Semitism here for a little bit, and where that comes from. Anti-Semitism, is this thing still recording? Anti-Semitism, well, one part of it is Jews were the ones who killed Jesus. But, and so some of the stupid people would be like, oh yeah, well, we hate Jews because Jews killed Jesus. But another thing about anti-Semitism is that, well, Jews were always kind of like an outside group. They were never the like native inhabitants, because Jews traced their ancestry to the Middle East, and so it's kind of like how gypsies are today, you know. Gypsies aren't Serbians, you know, it's kind of like that. Jews aren't the real Germans. And so that's like the second most obvious reason for anti-Semitism. And then there's another reason for anti-Semitism, and that the whole money thing, you know, Jews have been, since the beginning of time, a money lending group of people. You know, even Jesus had a problem with that when he stormed the money changers in the temple and said, "You don't do this in the temple." But they're always like the ones who people went to borrow money. Isabel and Ferdinand from Spain in 1492 used Jewish money to do the Inquisition and kick the Moors out and kick everybody else's ass in Spain and unify Spain. And instead of paying the Jews back, they kicked the Jews out, and so they had to move to Ireland and Scotland and had that Inquisition for like 350, 80 years or something like that. They blame the whole money thing on Jews. And then another cause of anti-Semitism is Jews. I mean, the way that they look at money is they look at it very kind of business-like, and so they have a different take on charity. And one of the Christian ideas, you know, and there's lots of parables from Jesus, you know, like if a Roman makes you carry him a mile, then you offer to do it 2 miles. And if someone steals your hat, give them your jacket, you know. And it's the whole idea of it's better to give than to receive. And I think that's an advanced concept. And in that regard, I would have to say that Christianity is superior to Judaism. And, you know, so if like Ann Coulter or some of these people are like, yeah, Christianity is a new and improved Judaism, it's better to not just be like, oh, you're a stupid bitch, but just be like, okay, you know, and try to empathize and agree with that part of what they're saying. But Christians just have more of an idea. They don't understand the concept of like loaning somebody money and then making money off of it, you know, charging interest. Like a Christian would want to, if you loan somebody money, you should loan them for money rent-free, you know, interest-free, and you need to give, and, you know, charity, like people giving a certain amount of their money to you know, the abbeys and the monasteries and stuff, because it's God's work, and give because that's what God wants you to do. It's kind of the same thing, one of the reasons why why the Chinese recently didn't like the Buddhists in the same period of time, you know, in the 30s and 40s. It's because the Confucius religion sees, you know, charity, giving in Buddhism and paying for all the Buddhist monasteries and all that, as just a drain on the economy, you know, like they're not doing anything for us, we're just draining our economy into them, which isn't really that accurate, because a lot of these monasteries, you know, these monks and Buddhists and in Christian, they wrote books, they were busy, you know, they're scientists figuring out Mendeleev and, you know, and writing books, and, you know, the saying prayers for people for money was ridiculous and out of control, but I don't know. So most of the people in Europe were Christians, and so they kind of thought that Jews were a parasite race. Kind of like in the same exact way that nowadays in America, people think that bankers are a parasite a parasite, a profession. Only in those days, the bankers and the Jews were the same thing. So if you're going to go, if you're going to go against the bankers, it's like you go against the Jews, and so it kind of turns into a racism thing rather than a bigotry against a certain profession. And so that's basically why people didn't like the Jews and thought they were rat parasites who were just feeding off of the host race that they weren't even natives to, Germany and all in those other countries. Um, but how can you explain why Germans were so aggressive though, and just killed them? Why didn't they just deport them and stuff? Well, they couldn't really deport them because Germany, number one, wasn't the only country that had anti-Semitism. It was also the Czechs, Czech Republic, or whatever they were called, Czechoslovakia in those days, and Czech. The head Catholic guy was one of the facilitators to the Holocaust, making Judaism illegal and gathering them up. The Pope in Rome tried to protect Jews, but a lot of Catholics, like in Czech and also in Hungary, in the last month of the Holocaust, Hungary was sending 160 train loads a day or something to Birkenau, next to Auschwitz, which is this just giant field. I mean, it's more than a mile across. You can't even see the other side of it. It's as far as the eye can see, rows of buildings of just jam-packed with 3-level high bunk beds of where they would have the people work the people to death, and 90% of the people who they brought there got gassed upon arrival. Anyways, the old men and the young boys and all the women just got gassed, and a lot of the people died on the way there because it was a week to get there from Hungary, and so they froze and got sick from all the putrefaction because there was only one tiny little slit for air in the train, and it was horrible. And when they ran out of Zyklon B to kill them with, they would shoot him in the head, bash him in the brains, just kill him as fast as they could because they knew that the Allies were coming to liberate them, and they just wanted to kill as many Jews as they could. But how could they just get so evil and aggressive? Because if you meet Germans, they seem like pretty mellow, relaxed people. Well, Germans, I don't think Germans are really like that today. I think there was World War II was kind of genocide against Germans. And so after World War II, it was a different Germany, different kind of people. Only the hippies survived Germany. The ones who were hiding and didn't want to die. And so the brave, crazy fighter dudes who were all died. So Germany, I think, has a different psychological makeup now than it did before World War II. But in those days, I think Germany, they were really proud as a people. And they saw themselves as separate from Mediterranean Europe, and better even. Even though they were barbarians in the days of the Roman Empire, and they knew that, they still were barbarians. They could be proud of their barbarianhood. And even in the days of the barbarians, Romans, I think, thought that they were better. Back in the days of Julius Caesar, when the Romans first encountered, Romans were starting to explore around and first encountered the Germans, Julius Caesar actually crossed the Rhine and was rampaging through Germany for 2 weeks and then came back, and they decided they'd try to make Germany a province after that. And in those days, Germans were nomads in the same way that Native Americans were nomads when Europeans came. Let's make sure this is still recording. They would live a summer in a valley, and then when they had kind of depleted the area of, the berries they were gathering and the animals they were hunting, they'd pack up their teepees and hike into the next valley, and if there was another tribe there, they'd fight with the tribe, and it was kind of like, strongest man wins, and they liked it that way. Like they knew about the lifestyle of Mediterraneans, and they thought their way was better because they thought that being nomads kept them strong, and but they were still in the process of kind of becoming more sedentary, anyways. But but yeah, I mean, Germany was just a different world in those days. Lions and bears existed in Germany until the days of not very long before Julius Caesar, until like sometime in the first millennium BC. That's why you have like coat of arms, lions in England and stuff. They knew about lions and bears in Europe because they lived there. They actually existed up there. So it was just this wild, thickly forested lions, bears, tigers. Plenty of flora and fauna to just hunt and run around in your buckskins. And so they had a high protein diet, and so they're really big. They're a lot bigger than the Romans too, which probably made them think that they were better. Roman soldiers are about 5'7". Greeks were even smaller. Greeks are tiny. They're like 5 feet tall, because in Greece there's a really high alkaline content in the ocean there, and so they couldn't really fish that much, and so they were living off of like olives and stuff and grain. So they didn't have a really high protein diet. Same thing with the Romans. So they didn't get very big, but the Germans got real big. And Germans got, I mean, I would, the root German race, I wouldn't be surprised even in the days of Julius Caesar if men were like 7 feet, women were like 6'8", and so they could kick the shit out of a Roman soldier one-on-one. But the Romans could hold their own against Germans, in battle, because they had a better fighting tactic. It's because the Germans would just run out by themselves. I'm gonna kick your ass by myself, and then they get cut down by the formations of the Romans. But so in that regard, they're blonde hair, blue eyed, and so they thought they were like more beautiful, angelic looking. And so, anyways, that is what the Nazis were all about, and Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler wanted to recreate the Germany of old, the Germany of the giants and the Uberman, the ancient German race of giants, and bring them back by only interbreeding Germans against Germans, and these Jews from the Middle East were like inferior. And so that's why Adolf Hitler, he had his SS troops of like this, and like they had to be over a certain height, and they had to be blonde hair and blue eyed, and they were trying to do this like eugenics thing where they only bred them with each other, and they wanted to make that the future of Germany. It's like the Germans of old, and kick all those rat Jews out, and have the ancient race. And it was kind of interesting because Hitler was a short dude, and wasn't even German. Let's talk about Hitler for a little bit. He was like this creepy dude who nobody liked from bumfuck nowhere, Austria. And he's one of these guys, and I'm sure everybody's met one of these guys before. He's that know-it-all dude who just sits there and talks for hours on end, just talking trash about everybody and thinks he knows everything, and nobody wants to be around him because he just talks forever. And but that he always has like that one little follower hanger-on dude who like follows him. And so Hitler had one of those guys. He had his little buddy who would sit there and like never talk and had no personality, would just sit there and watch Hitler talk forever. And I don't think anybody liked Hitler. I think he was originally just a scummy, I mean, he came from a broken family. He had a stepfather who like beat him, and his mother was like, weak, and he tried to get into the Vienna School of Art, and I saw some of his art paintings, and they're really good. So I don't think he got rejected, and I don't think he got rejected because he was a bad artist. I think he got rejected because he was just a creep. And and so he just lived poorly and would just talk and talk and talk and talk. And so the reason that so it's like how did Hitler ever become the guy who took control of Germany and had everybody hang on every word that he said? Well, I think what happened was Germany. There's probably a lot of people who thought just like Hitler, and Germans were exasperated, and they were all generally were doing the anti-Semitism scapegoat thing, um, and they needed a voice. They needed somebody to galvanize that aggressive, we have to do something attitude that they were starting to develop. And that's kind of a characteristic of Germans, even since the days of Julius Caesar, when they were nomadic warriors, is they had, and the preeminent German philosopher who lived around the days of the unification of the Kingdom of Germany in 1870, Friedrich Nietzsche, wrote a book called Will to Power, where he talked about if the true people who take over the world are the people who are strong and who know what they want, and they gain what they want by their will. They're just the power of their will, and the strongest survive, and so you have to get out there and do it. And so the Germans were like, yes, this is us. We are the Germans. We have the will to power. And so Hitler, Nietzsche's sister was a racist, was a Nazi. He wasn't, but the Germans kind of utilized that and used Nietzsche as kind of like their slogan and their whole will to power. And like, if we're going to get anything done, we have to do it. And so they needed a voice. They needed some crazy guy to get up there. And so Hitler was that guy. They turned to him. And so all of a sudden, since the Germans are so poor that they started to lose their minds and they got desperate, and so all of a sudden this crazy dude who talks forever about blaming everybody else and the Jews, they started listening to him, and then so they voted him in. They voted the Nazis in 1933. It was like 80% of the Germans voted Nazi Party. It was a landslide democratic victory, so, but once they got the power, Hitler and the Nazis, they changed the rules after they got in power, and they said it was kind of like in the ancient Roman days, they would if they're at war, they would change the rules, and they'd temporarily go from being a republic to a dictatorship, and they would elect their dictator, and the dictator would get to say whatever he wanted and do whatever he wanted, but as soon as the war was over, the dictator would step down, and they'd go back to being a republic. And so it's kind of like that mentality, like we have to have the dictator make all the rules and get this economy going. So they suspended all of the rights of anybody else. And they basically rewrote the Constitution and made a new country. And it was no more Weimar Republic. Now it was the Empire of Germany under the Third Reich, the Nazi Party. I think the First Reich, I don't know what the First Reich was. Maybe the First Reich was like when they were badass barbarians, and then the Second Reich would have been the Holy Roman Empire. And so then they're like, now it is our time to take over again the Third Reich. We are the new. Now, Holy Roman Empire is kind of another a thing that I'll bring up because it was a Christian country. The Holy Roman Empire was the German kingdom, the Kingdom of Germany, that included all of their Catholic holdings, all of the Catholic dioceses and abbeys and bishoprics and that were scattered throughout Germany, but also outside of the borderlines of the Kingdom of Germany, like in Netherlands and Luxembourg and stuff that Germany owned. And even from time to time, Germany was in possession of various vassal kingdoms in the Balkans. So that's why they called it empire, and they called it the Holy Roman Empire. But the Holy Roman Empire was the Kingdom of Germany, just the Kingdom of Germany, including all their other holdings. So they were Catholic. The Germans, the Germans took over the Catholic religion. You know, I don't. There may be a misconception that some people have that Catholicism is a Roman thing, and it's really not. Or Christianity is a Roman thing, and it's not. Um, Christianity, and let me bring in a misconception about the fall of Rome. People have a huge misconceptions about the fall of Rome. Rome didn't fall because, and I've heard this recently by like some guy on the radio and some dude wrote on one of my YouTube videos today, like the fall of Rome, because Rome became militarized, and as soon as Rome becomes militarized, within one generation, they fall. And you know, or somebody might say, oh, Rome fell because they were using like, you know, lead pipes and it made them crazy, or Rome fell because of all of the political infighting. Rome did have a lot of political infighting, which directly led to them getting overtaken by the Goths. You know, like Valens didn't want to fight by himself, or didn't want to wait until his son came to fight the Visigoths. He wanted to fight himself to get the glory, and if he'd have waited, he would have won that battle, and the Visigoths never would have destroyed the Roman army and, you know, sacked Rome in 410. And, you know, they wouldn't have been taken over by the Vandals in 476 if you know, one general hadn't have gotten the finagled to get the other general killed by making the regent empress think that he was trying to kill her and take over power and all this stuff. But the fact of the matter is that Rome had always had infighting. You know, even in the beginning of the empire with Augustus against Mark Antony and Lepidus and all this stuff, Rome had always had all those infighting and civil wars. So it's not the civil wars that caused the fall of the Roman Empire. What caused the fall of the Roman Empire was barbarians like the Germans had been taking notes off the Romans for 500 years and had been becoming less nomadic and had been settling down and basically realizing that they could have a more comfortable life living like the Romans. And so they had becoming more Romanized. Even though they weren't within the Roman Empire, they had been becoming more Romanized for 500 years. And so Rome no longer had that military advantage over the other barbarians. You know, Roman army was filled with barbarians. All Roman Empire was in those days, in those latter days of the Roman Empire, it was just a giant army, a giant military army keeping peace. You know, controlled by one emperor, one guy. You know, so that they could avoid having civil wars and infighting. And so the fall of the Roman Empire was basically an inevitable process of the world becoming a bigger place. And you know, and as a result, becoming less centralized, and so you created all the you know, medieval fiefdoms and stuff. And of course, Rome wasn't as powerful, so it seemed like the Dark Ages came in Italy, but in the outskirts, you know, they were actually becoming more advanced, and overall, they were becoming more advanced. So you know, Christianity, Rome. You know, Christianity, everybody was becoming Christian. All of the barbarians were just as Christian as the Romans. And that's why the Romans adopted Christianity, because everybody was Christian. So they go, okay, well, we'll just become Christian like everybody else. And so the Germans adopted that, and the Germans became Christian, but, you know, Rome stayed as the central of the Christian religion, the Catholicism, because they still wanted to have that centralization, you know, and peace. So the Holy Roman Empire was very Christian, is basically what I'm saying, which is not Jewish. So yeah, the Germans identified with Christianity, you know, and or maybe Hitler was trying to be pagan again, but you know, Christians were always anti-Semitic, so it was kind of that fed the anti-Semitism, and so. Hitler took over power and had all the power, and when one group of fanatics have the power like that, they basically made the decisions for the rest of the Germans, and unfortunately, a large enough of the population of the Germans went along with it and were anti-Semitic. Current present day Germans will tell you, oh, but we didn't know. They were keeping it secret from us. Yeah, maybe some of them were, but I think the fact of the matter was in those days they were just so desperate and crazy that they became that anti-Semitic. And in the beginning, they really liked Hitler and the Nazis because they created this war machine which got the economy going. You know, Hitler built the Autobahn. He got Volkswagen started. They built up a huge war machine, and so their economy was doing well based on that. And they had their pride going, got their pride back, and yeah, then they started taking over countries and attacking all those other countries quite easily because they weren't building up the army as much as they were. So then they thought they could take over the whole world and create peace that way. Um, and they thought that if they were going to win so easily, you know, they might as well kill all the those dirty rat Jews off, and in the future, you know, people would kind of forget about it and be like, oh, maybe it was bad, but whatever. Now there's no more Jews, so they just went for it. You know, that's what Germans do. They're like the Capricorn of the Europeans. When they set their mind to something, they're like a freight train, and they can't you can't switch them off. They just rumble through the jungle, through the forest, killing bears and lions and Romans. And so they thought they were better. One theory that some people have is that, like, if the Roman Empire ever took over Germany, like, would World War II ever happen? I think that's an interesting thing to conceptualize, because you know, they wouldn't have thought themselves as being so separate and from France and England and Italy and stuff. It's kind of interesting. Back in the year 26, Augustus sent 3 legions into Rome, but the Romans killed them, and that was it. That was it. They didn't try to go in ever again after that. Because the reason that happened is because there's this German called Arminius, Herman the German, who's actually a German hero. They have a big statue of him in Cologne. And he was this German dude who the Romans recruited and turned into a Roman general and brought him to Rome. And they said, yeah, you're gonna be one of our generals in our new province in Germany. And they did have a province in there for like 20 years, the province of Germany. But they passed him up for a promotion or something, and they pissed him off. So he went back to Germany, and he united all these German tribes and lured those three legions into some like narrow valley and built up these huge barriers so that the Romans couldn't escape. And they just, you know, they strung their army out so it was like 10 miles long, and they just hacked them apart over the course of like a week and killed every last one of them. And so then Germans got all pumped up after that and said, we're never going to get taken over by those Romans, haha. But then they kind of become Romanized, and then, yeah, and that's what happened. But let's see, there was something else I was going to talk about that was really important, about how they did that. Just a second. Oh my God. See, I can't think because of my fucking sickness. Holy shit. Holy shit. I'm gonna have to pause this and fucking close my eyes. Just a second. Alright, it just came back to me. Okay. Yes. Okay, so the question is, how in the hell could this guy Hitler take over Germany and do all those stupid, crazy things? You know, how could a lowlife? Because everybody agrees that Hitler was a lowlife and was just a crude, dirty ignoramus who just hated people. How could a crude, dirty, uneducated ignoramus take over an entire country? Well, it's kind of the same way how the dirty, ignorant ignoramus of Mussolini took over Italy. a very similar way of how the dirty, ignorant ignoramus of Stalin took over Russia. You know, um, Mussolini was a freaking pickpocket who had served time in jail. He was a convicted, homeless, come from a broken home, ignorant gangster, basically, a mafioso gangster, who took over Italy, took over all of Italy. And Stalin was a convicted bank robber, took over all of Russia. How could that have happened? Well, the reason that happened is because this was in the beginnings. This was kind of everything that happens in history is a reaction to what happened before. Like, the pendulum swang way too far over in one direction. And the people go, whoa, 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 we don't want any of that. Well, let's just do the opposite. So the pendulum had swung way, way, way too far in the direction of oligarchy, of paying, of basically taking orders from the rich, plugged-in aristocracy, where somebody had power just because they were born into the right family. And people had been sick of that by then because it caused lots of problems because, like in World War I, for example, these, these oligarchical leaders, they weren't on the field and they didn't know what was going on in the field, and they just gave their orders to the officers, and the officers gave their orders to the soldiers, and look what kind of a disaster happened there. There was no communication between the people. And so the people thought that they were just being used by the oligarchy. And it was really similar. The cause of World War I, the cause of World War II, these countries trying to take over all the other countries thinking they're better. It was the same thing as in the Napoleonic Wars. The reason that those Napoleonic Wars happened was because the French had their French Revolution, and so now they thought that they were better than everybody else in Europe, and that they thought that everybody else in Europe were slaves to the royal families that were all in cahoots with each other. Because all the royal families, they were all related to each other. Marie Antoinette was the daughter of the queen of the Austrian, the Habsburg Empire. She was the brother of the Holy Roman Emperor, the Kingdom of Germany. The wife of the last Tsar of Russia, Tsar Nicholas II, his wife was the granddaughter of Queen Victoria of England. And so all these people, they're like, oh, these bastards, we keep having these wars with each other, but the leaders of the countries are all related to each other, and so they're just having the wars because of these, jealousies, interfamilial jealousies, and we don't want these rich oligarchies. So that's what happened. That's what caused the Napoleonic Wars. The Napoleon and all the French people were like, let's take over the rest of Europe and get rid of all of these royal families, and they did. They killed the Holy Roman Empire, and they had to restructure. And then in 1918, the Russian Revolution happened. That was the last of the ancient European royal family, the Bolsheviks, who had been in control of Russia for like 380 years. And so they wanted something completely opposite. They said, "Oh, the people who are going to make the right decisions for our country are going to be poor people, because the poor people understand the poor people." It's kind of like what Marx said. Karl Marx came kind of in during the Industrial Revolution, and they're trying to decide, what do we need to have communism. We need to have like the government needs to administer everything, make the people the owner of everything, and basically control everything that happens in the country where the government owns it, and the government pays everybody equally and all that kind of stuff. But that did work because it was just an oligarchy, and an oligarchy is an oligarchy whether it's ruled by rich aristocratic families or by some poor dude. But the problem is that rich aristocratic families are more educated than some poor regular people. What the people thought in those days was that if you let some poor, uneducated guy take over, he's going to look after the poor people because he was poor himself. But it doesn't actually work out that way. What really happens is that it stays an oligarchy. Only problem is that the oligarchy are uneducated, and they don't know. They don't know. They think that they can make. They just don't make educated decisions, and they're just more barbaric, and so you got, it's like there's a lot to be said for educated people. Let's just put it that way. Even if they're rich and from rich families, these rich people from rich families, they had a good education. They were grown up since they were babies. They knew their history basically, and they knew how to finagle people and move people around in a way that would work, and they weren't overbearing and over aggressive with it. And that's what Stalin did. He went and killed 60 million people by shuffling people all over, sending people off to the gulag if they went against him, and Mussolini did the same thing, and Hitler took over and basically made the decisions for all the people, and so if the people didn't want to have a Holocaust and kill all those Jews, they didn't really have that much of a say, did they? Because they had it wasn't a republic anymore. It was now a dictatorship, so that's why it's kind of like it's an interesting study in democracy, because maybe democracy isn't always what we want. The Nazis were elected into power in the biggest landslide victory in the history of humankind. It was like 80% of the people wanted the Nazis in. But they were the wrong people to get in. Another example of how pure straight democracy doesn't work is like Athens was a democracy, and then Athens became the Athenian Empire. Originally the Delian League, and then they annexed everything and turned into the Athenian Empire. But it was a democracy, and they democratically elected to send 40,000 people to try to besiege Syracuse for some stupid reason, because like Syracuse didn't want to pay like a certain, like the agreed amount of money or something to the Delian League or something like that. And all the wise men of Athens said, no, 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 you don't want to do that. It won't work. You don't cause a fight over this. It's too far away. But it was a democracy. So there was this like really popular kid from an aristocratic family, and he was like, no, we got to kick their asses. Let's go. And so all the people were like, yes. It was this mob mentality. Yes, let's go attack Syracuse. So they went there with 40,000 people, and then they were getting besieged and losing the battle. So then they democratically elected another 40,000 people, and they all died. So it was 80,000 people died. So then they stopped being a democracy after that. They turned into an aristocratic oligarchy, where the educated people, the old, wise, educated people, get to make the decisions for the rest of the idiots out there who are like all macho, beating their chests. And so that's kind of the transition from like a straight democracy into, or from a republic into a democracy needs to happen with baby steps, and only until the populace is educated. Because the populace obviously wasn't educated when they voted the Nazis in, and then all the Nazis decide to kill everybody and kill all the Jews. I guess that's how it happened. They just they got to the point where they thought that they weren't even human. So one interesting, thing we should do is like kind of compare what to try to avoid that happening again is to try to see what elements of Nazism exist today. Um, and I think the counterparts of like Hitler in today would be the Bill O'Reillys, Rush Limbaugh, Laura Ingraham, um, Michael Savage, Glenn Beck. These people who just are sensationalists. Like how Rush Limbaugh said a couple of days ago. Those fem Nazis shouldn't be allowed to have sex. They need to put an aspirin between their legs so they can't spread their legs and get fucked. Like just sensationalists and trying to get um, um, scapegoats. You need to like tone it down a little bit. And if somebody says something crazy, don't be like, oh fuck you. You gotta be level-headed and just answer everything what they say and not try to have a scapegoat and not label people. Like Ann Coulter is like, those liberals. We hate the liberals. It's like same thing. And because we still have that kind of stuff in the Balkans against the gypsies. And I think those people in the Balkans need to chill out and just give gypsies an opportunity. And yeah, it's okay to fume about gypsies and say they're bullshit, but don't like bring it to action. Don't take it to the next level and say, yes, and that's why we need to like eject them. And they're not real Serbians, and yeah. So just don't have a scapegoat. If somebody's a stoner, just if and you don't like them being a stoner, just reason with them. But don't be like, your opinion doesn't matter because you're a stoner, so shut the fuck up. So that's basically what happened. That would be cool if you could hear a German do a video about this, but I seriously doubt it's going to happen. It's too sensitive to them. Um, yeah. In fact, nowadays I don't think anybody besides an American is going to do a video about anything because people in the old world are just really too paranoid. Too paranoid to. They think they get labeled. They're into labels, and they don't want to upload a video and get labeled. And you do. You get labeled if you upload a video. So just don't label people. Just talk to somebody. Talk it out. Communication is what does it. So anyways, that's enough.